Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm due to retire in a couple of years. And I really wanted to talk today about how I planned and timed my retirement to make sure that before taking the plunge in retiring, that I had enough money to survive through the rest of my retirement. And I'm going to talk through a way that I did it. Um, Over the last few months, I've been refining ways of working out this out. And we finally got to a position where myself and my wife are really happy with the calculations we've done. I'd like to share them. What I would say though is something new I learned yesterday means that if I was starting again today, I'd have done this differently. So I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. So the three things you're going to need is a calculator, a pen, and a piece of paper. Okay, because what we're going to do, where we're going to start with is what we spend now and any differences that we know we're going to spend in retirement. There is something called the 80% rule, which means you can take what you spend now and assume that once you retire, you'll spend 80% of that. But I think we can be a bit more accurate than that just with a calculator, a pen and a piece of paper, really. So what I'd encourage you to do is get bank accounts out. And don't just look at 1 month because, as we know, Christmas is a lot different than, say, January for expenditure. So we need to think across the year, really, how much we spend. But the number we want to come to is a monthly number. Okay, and that's because we tend to think in months. Our gas bill comes in monthly, our TV bill comes in monthly. It's quite easy to work out how much we spend on food per month once we look at our grocery style bills. So working to months is a really good way of keeping them numbers in mind in a way that is understandable to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through our bank statements. We're going to make a note of all the things that we spend. And once we've got that, we've got our expenditure amount, the amount that we're going to need once we retire. Next on the list is to work out exactly what we're going to receive and, more importantly, when we're going to receive it. So to work through this example, what I'm going to do with my pen and paper here and calculator is to work through an example for Sue and Bob. They're about to retire in 2 years, and I'll lay out what their expenditure is. So we'll start with going through their bank accounts and pulling these items out. Okay, so that tells us what their expenditure is. Now, let's have a look at what their income will be and at what points they'll draw that. So Bob has two different pensions. He has one that is a defined benefit pension and one that is a defined contribution. So just to briefly explain the difference, defined benefit is very similar to your state retirement pension in that a certain amount is taken out of your payslip each month, and then at a certain age, usually for someone who's my age of 55, that would be 67, I will have a fixed amount. I'll know what that fixed amount is, and I'll be paid that when I retire. Defined benefits is a similar scheme. If you've worked in the public sector, you may have had one of these. So the NHS, governments, local government, that kind of thing. And the way that works is each month, a certain amount will be taken out your salary, and then every year you'll have built up an amount that you're going to get paid when you retire. And that won't be based on how much you've paid in, it'll be based on how many years you've worked there. When I started working defined benefits pensions, say 20, 30 years ago, it would always be a 60th of the number of years I've been there. So say my salary at that time was £30,000, and I worked for 60 years, and then I would be paid £30,000. If I worked for 30 years, I would be paid half of that. Okay, so later on, that pretty much moved to 80ths as the stock market took a dip back in '99. Pension providers started to really struggle, the firms and public sector started to really struggle to be able to meet the demands of them defined benefit pensions. So now it tends to be an 80th of the number of years you've been there. So if you work there for 20 years, you'll end up with a quarter, roughly, of the amount that you're paid, either on your last day if it's final salary or your average salary. And most schemes have now moved to average salary as well. So that's the defined benefit pension. Now, defined contribution is different. On a defined contribution, you define how much you're going to pay in the pot. That pot is then invested by your pension provider. It earns interest. It earns the shares that it invests in go up. And when you come towards the end of retirement, you'll be able to look at that amount and say, I can now take this amount, I can do a few things with it, then I can buy an annuity, which is similar in a way to a defined benefit, and that the annuity will be a guarantee that someone will pay me a certain amount each month. Or I could decide to be more flexible and to actually take that pension out as I need it. Okay, so we're thinking about Bob, and he's got a defined benefit and a defined contribution. He wants to retire when he is 55. So he can work out now, being a 53-year-old, how much he's going to get from his defined contribution as a pot of money to spend, and how much he's going to get from his defined benefit, which will be from the date he draws it at 55. He knows that will be this amount. Okay, Sue only has a defined contribution pension, and hers is laid out here. So the way they work their finances is they bundle everything together. So let's have a look at the timings on these. They both paid full stamp, which means it's an old-fashioned term actually, which means they paid their full contribution into their state pension, which means at 67 they'll both be able to draw their pension. Now the pensions at the moment is £11,500 each, so that's £23,000. So as this couple wants to retire at the same time when they're 55, they need to work out how much they're going to spend in the first 12 years, and then they'll need to work out how much they're going to spend from 67 onwards. So effectively, that defined contribution now has to last 12 years, not the normal 30 years as you might expect. So the way we're going to calculate this is we're going to take Bob's defined benefit pension. We're going to take the state retirement pension at 67 for both of the couple. And then let's add them up and see if that meets their needs. And as we can see, once they hit 67, that meets their target needs. So that means that Bob's defined contribution pension has to last 12 years before they can start claiming their full retirement pension. If the sum of the defined contribution benefits for Bob and Sue add up to this amount, that now has to last them 12 years until they can claim all their pensions when they hit 67. However, just to add one level of complexity, Bob is going to claim his defined benefit pension early at 55, which means that he will have some income from his defined benefit pension between 55 and 67. So this is the amount they need to top up Bob's defined benefit pension until they're 67. Because once they're 67, they know between the three pensions that they'll have then, the defined benefit pension and the two state pensions, they're happy with. So the defined contribution benefits, I've got to last the additional amount, the additional 12 years up until that point. So the last bit of the calculation here, they have a joint contribution pot of £225,000. Let's assume safely that they'll achieve 6% growth in that over the 12-year term. That leaves them with £238,500. Now, there are 144 months in the 12 years that they need to draw down this money from, which means they need £1,656 per month. And we can see here that they've made it just. But I do think 6% over 12 years is a fairly safe amount to go for. So you may find you've got quite a complex set of defined contribution pensions. In fact, I had 7. So to make this a lot easier for me, I consolidated all them 7 pensions into a SIP pension, a single pension. And over the last few years and the next couple of years, I've been able to invest that SIP and know exactly how much is in that. So if you can either do 2 ways, you can add all, if you have complex set of defined contribution pensions, you can either move them into a SIP or you can add up the various different pensions that you've got. Okay, so I mentioned if I was starting today that I would do this differently. So how I would do this differently is something I learned yesterday, which is that your pension providers are required to give you an advance on your pension at any age, really, for you to be able to go and spend on a regulated financial advisor. So if you're not comfortable with a calculator and all your bank statements, and you prefer some professional help to make sure that you do get this right, then a good way forward is to go to one of your pension providers and say, I'd like to withdraw £500. I'm going to spend it with this financial advisor, and they'll do the similar work with you. They'll sit across the desk from you, they'll do this work, and they'll give you a much better plan than you can probably do yourself, to be fair. I mean, I'm not a financial advisor, but these guys really know what they're doing. So if I was going to start this again today and I hadn't done all the prep work I'd already done, I'd be going to my pension provider, taking out some money and going to a proper financial advisor and getting the plan done for myself. So if you've enjoyed this content and you are interested in pensions, then please give this video a like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.